Welcome to the Chase and Embrace Show, where we interview women who are chasing God and embracing His purpose for her life, with the hopes to encourage you to do the thing that God is calling you to do. Hey everyone, welcome to the Chase and Embrace Show. I am your host, Sharon, and with me again, we are on the last day talking about the Saboteurs. It's Krystina Dixon with Breathe Life Coaching, and this has been an amazing series. I have learned so much about myself and others around me, and I have just appreciated you and this series. So thank you for being on the show, and thankfully, this is not the end, because we are going to be doing an assessment of me live on this show next week. So I'm super excited.
You're so brave.
Well, one of the things is that first of all, it just popped in my head. So, I always I feel like I'm trying to be guided by the Holy Spirit. But the thing is it can be fearful. We're talking fear, right? And I want people to be able to come to your website, understand what the process is, and know it's not as scary to do an assessment. And so I think it'll be fabulous. I'm super excited about it. I'll be curious to see if I'm correct or if I'm wrong after going through this series. So I'm super excited about this actually. But today we are talking about the 10th saboteur. And what is that today?
Victim.
Victim. Yes. I know a lot of people who play victim, but unfortunately, I'm curious to find out the victim when we're a child versus when it's in control. So what is it about victim when we're a child, when we're 5, that protects us?
So all of the saboteurs are a childlike means to survive. Every mammal has a drive, an instinct to survive. And as a child, you're powerless, you're helpless, you're dependent on everyone around you and your environment. So we're hardwired to gravitate a certain direction to certain saboteurs, and our environment, the things that we see in our environment, our relationships, the way that we learn about who we are, who others are, and what this big scary world is all about, all influence which saboteurs we gravitate to. So I say we're hardwired, but they're not personality types.
Right.
They're actually, in the Christian space, I look at them as tools of the enemy. And what happens is, as a child, there are certain inherent messages that we receive, that we are tuned into, that then develop techniques, skills, strategies to survive, which is great when we're children. But what happens is we repeat it over and over and over and over enough, it becomes our autopilot brain. And those neural pathways in our brain are really deep and ingrained, and we don't know that we have another option. So what we do in my work is we basically build the other part of your brain and teach you how to identify those saboteurs, and then how to shift away from them and into your clear-headed, really focused, clarity, discernment brain.
Right.
So
discernment
like
is a good
all
thing.
of this, yes. So all of the saboteurs serve values. There's certain values attached to them, and those are the things that we're a little bit more hardwired to appreciate and to be drawn to. So, for example, in the victim, and when I say the victim, I'm referring to the saboteur, not the person.
Right.
The person who has a strong victim saboteur really values authenticity and empathy, and they really like meaningful interactions. So what she learned, what the woman with the strong victim saboteur learned early on, was that her vulnerability was powerful. So it helped her to connect to others and make sense of whatever her perceived pain was. And when I say pain, I'm not referring just to trauma. This can be just a normal family.
Right. Because no one's perfect. There's pain in everything. It doesn't mean that you grew up in a bad family. It could mean that you grew up in a bad family, but you can't get through this life without pain.
Right. And so what the saboteurs do is they tell you, hey, we can help you get away from this pain. We
Mm-hmm.
can lessen this pain. In fact, what it does is create patterns that only intensify the pain. We just don't quite make that connection sometimes.
Right.
So your victim saboteur could, this child, because it is a childlike brain, could have been in a situation where she didn't have space that was safe for her to process her grief or her disappointment or trauma. Or she could also come from a home that just, when she had big emotions, they were just invalidated or they were overlooked. So she started to turn inward and she learned to survive through being sensitive. And it's almost like sometimes you'll see this in families where if there is a family member who maybe has a disability
Mm-hmm.
or some sort of requirement for special needs, they get more attention because they
Mm-hmm.
need more help. She can learn. So she may have been ignored. She may have felt ignored. She may have felt dismissed or rejected. So she learns that to be vulnerable and to be essentially helpless and weak is what the saboteurs do, that she will get empathy from people and she will have compassion
Mm-hmm.
from them, and that it makes her special. So you can see sometimes a victim saboteur, it's almost, if you've ever met anyone where the whole world's out to get them,
Mm-hmm.
everybody is against them. They often don't have very deep, long lasting relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually a victim saboteur, because in this way of trying to get approval and acceptance and love, she believes she is so unique and so important that the world's out to get her. Everybody is out to get her. That makes submitting to God really, really tough.
Yes.
Because if you think that God is out to get you, you're probably
Mm-hmm.
not going to surrender and obey.
Right. Oh wow. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I know anyone who has this particular saboteur as a dominant. So what is a healthy victim then? Like saboteur, like when it's in your sage brain.
So when it's in your sage brain, you're very empathetic to
Mm,
people. You can read people really well. You're very good with emotional insight. You thrive on other people's vulnerability. You really have compassion for other people. Like, just think like really heightened emotions.
mhm.
That's where she is. She's so sensitive to everything, right?
Right.
The issue is when she attaches that pain or that uniqueness to her identity,
Okay.
and sadness and sorrow and pain become the script that she's writing for herself. Because what happens is we all have a belief about our life and its story. We will seek out things that support and validate that story. So we have the power to change our story. But the victim develops a learned helplessness. She develops this, I'm powerless to change it. I'm weak. I'm needy. I'm too much, right? As opposed to not enough, she's too much. So the lie that the saboteur tells her is, you're helpless and no one understands what you're going through.
Okay.
No one can relate to how hard this really is. So, for example, you're going through a divorce, but your divorce is so much more spectacularly painful than anybody else's divorce.
Gotcha.
You're completely alone in your suffering, and
Mm,
there's no one to ask for help.
mm,
Now, one thing that is often misconstrued, people with a strong victim saboteur, you'll often hear other people around them say that, like, they're choosing to stay stuck.
mm-hmm.
But it's not that she's choosing to stay stuck. It's just the pain validates her and is proof that she matters. She's
Okay.
significant because she hurts.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Very
a very
interesting.
Yeah, it's a very cyclical saboteur, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
very tough one. You cannot get out of it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what you'll often see is people have a tough time being in relationships, whether they're friendships or romantic relationships, with someone with a strong victim saboteur, because it is emotionally draining, these women typically require a lot of energy from other people. And other people want her to live a better life, but they feel like they want it more than she does.
Yeah, that makes sense because they're kind of stuck in this pattern of my pain is worse than your pain. You can't understand. And I can see how that one would be hard to pull yourself out of because yeah, I can see how that one would be hard to be pulled out of by
Well,
yourself.
what's really crazy about it is, remember, like, she fears being abandoned and being lonely. At the same time, that victim saboteur pushes people away. She has a
Mhm.
fear of not being loved or being unimportant. But at the same time, the saboteur is pushing away people who want to love her and people who do think she's important.
Mhm.
So she feels like the only time that she has anything to offer is if she's in pain,
Mm.
because it gets people's attention. It gets that connection, at least temporarily.
Right. Right.
And she doesn't want to be dismissed or invalidated, but that's what happens when she's stuck in that pattern, because it's just too much for people. They don't know how to help her.
Yeah,
And it
you
comes
don't.
off that she doesn't want the help.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're saying that typically somebody who has a dominant victim saboteur is someone who, as a child, learned that I'm in need, I need help, I'm hurting, got that validation that she was looking for.
Right. So let's take a marriage, for example. You have a husband and wife. And I think if we haven't been in that relationship, we all know people who have been in a relationship where maybe there's some suppression of emotions. There's these expectations that are never verbalized. And it gets to a point that it's like, well, that's it. I'm leaving. And then the other person does something.
Hmm.
It's kind of that idea that, like, it has to be big and dramatic and intense and serious for you to even see me and acknowledge me. So she likely, not always, but grew up in a home where just her emotions were not met with care,
Hmm.
or where someone else's pain took up more space. Maybe a chronically ill parent, maybe an emotionally unavailable caregiver. You will see the victim saboteur very much in women who experience trauma,
Hmm.
but also it could be just you have a very disconnected parent who can't fill those emotional needs for you.
Or
She may.
a parent that possibly passed away and isn't there. And then, the father reacts in his way or something, or the mother, depending on who. Away, what parent. So there's an
Right.
absence there.
And one of the things, and I know that I did this with my kids, so I'll be the first to admit it. Something would happen that was very important to them and meaningful to them. And I would just be like, well, hey, at least you have food. Other people have it worse, or at least you have shoes. There's people in the world who would love to have shoes. But what I didn't realize I was doing at the time was really invalidating and discounting their experience the way they saw it. So if I said things like, you'll be fine, just stop, you'll be fine, or you're being dramatic, right?
Hmm.
I'm invalidating those feelings. So she learned those feelings only matter if they're really big. And so she has
Okay.
to up the ante every time, right? Pain
Uh,
is the only way I get attention. So if I stay in my hurt, you'll pay attention to me. You won't ignore me.
oh, interesting. What a hard way to live.
It is. It is. And you'll see it very common in people with addiction because they're trying to escape that pain, but
Hmm.
then it only creates more pain.
Right.
The victim saboteur is really good at creating or helping to design a woman who really wants to receive comfort but struggles.
Mm.
Because if you have a victim saboteur and I'm your friend and I'm trying to comfort you and lift you up, what the saboteur says is that I'm going to get better and you're going to leave.
Hmm.
So I don't really, what you think you're doing to comfort me is going to backfire on you. And then that's when you're going to get tired of this.
Right. That just breaks my heart. Actually, I think this is one of the hardest and one of the hardest saboteurs. I think it's one of the most painful. I mean, there's other things like avoider and stuff you're more avoiding, so you're not dealing with that. But to deal with the idea that people don't love you unless you're hurting is super sad to me. And I hope that anyone, if you identify with this, that you reach out to Krystina and work through that. And the other thing is for some reason, if you want, one of the things is to help anybody through any of these saboteurs is your identity in Christ. And the great thing is Krystina does have a book on this very thing. So if you're afraid to reach out to her personally, you can get her book. And so why don't you just talk a little bit about your book?
There is hope for this woman who feels like she's just too broken to love, or that she has to be broken to be loved. The upside is admitting that we're broken is a really good first step to letting God love us.
Yes, for sure.
But the
Very
book is
much.
titled, yes, the book is titled Named, A Daughter's Beginning, and it is a 40-day devotional. It's a little bit unique. I call it an experiential devotional because you're going to have your verse and some thoughts about that verse as it compares to how we walk in this world. But then there's also some reflection questions that you can directly apply to your life. And then there's a what's called a breath prayer, which is where you inhale what God's giving you and exhale what's not meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's a little piece where you get a weekly challenge, and it's nothing difficult. It's not overly time consuming, but you are asked that you do part of it in community with a trusted friend or mentor, because we have to realize we are not alone in this. So it is designed in my coaching. I have what's called the Breathe Journey. It's a year-long journey, and it has 3 phases: peace, passion, and purpose. This book
Mm-hmm.
is essentially the peace phase of that. It's really
Okay.
hard to walk in your purpose if you can't recognize your passion because you don't know who you are in Christ. So that's where we start.
Good place to start.
It's a when I put it together absolutely zero thought about sales or anything like that. It was just something God asked me to do. He asked me to write a devotional that if I could time travel, I would give to myself 10, 20, 30 years ago with the what I've learned over that time, both professionally and personally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this book is about.
That's awesome. I can't wait to dive into it. I'm going to be doing it with a friend, so I can't wait. Because, like you
Yay.
said, community, right?
Yes.
So I was like, oh, I have a friend that we've been wanting to do something together. And I was like, hey, what do you think about this? And she's like, sure. So I'm super excited to do this.
Well, I
So,
appreciate your support.
yes, always. So, well, that's really cool. I don't know anyone with the victim saboteur. I don't believe. I could be wrong because it can probably hide in a lot of different ways with the different saboteurs. What could somebody do to help lead them out of that kind of victim saboteur?
So, victim saboteur is one in particular that I really say, I never say anything's impossible because with God, anything's possible. But
Correct.
to me, in my opinion, it is probably the hardest one to change yourself.
Hmm.
It's because it's really hard for you to find support that knows how to support you,
Right.
and
That makes
you
sense.
don't typically have a lot of friendships or close relationships willing to walk you through it. So I usually recommend that you do seek out somebody who has some knowledge about it, whether it's a pastor or somebody that you
Hmm.
trust to walk you through it, because it is such a loud saboteur and it is so cyclical. If you have something like people pleaser, we can accept that a little easier than we can
Hmm.
victim. Nobody wants to be called a victim. Nobody wakes up and
Right.
goes, you know what I think I'm going to do today? I think I'm going to be a victim,
Hmm.
right? So it is so encompassing and consuming that I really recommend you seek out somebody who is trained and can actually help you with it.
Hmm.
There is a free assessment you can take on my website, and we can do a discovery call to talk about how it's affecting your life. But it is definitely the beautiful thing, I do want to say this. I've walked women through the victim saboteur. It is probably one of the most significant transformations you see. When
Mm.
she gets on the other side of it, it is just like she has gone from this just helpless, oh, I'm so weak, I can't do it, to, I mean, the more fear you have to convert to power, the more powerful you are. And the
Right.
victim is really strong in that fear category.
Mhm. And the thing is,
So
as you said, one of the traits is empathy. And so when they become in their sage brain, they're like probably one of the most beautiful people because
they
they can
really are.
identify with people's pain.
Well, and what I like about it, if you want to say that, is they're so used to battling that they become really amazing warriors. And to be a warrior for God is incredible. Their
Yes.
deep empathy, what's neat about that is then when they walk different, they interact with other people differently, they can leave a super lasting impact that glorifies the kingdom on the people around them. Because if you're around someone who maybe is an avoider or a people pleaser, and I'm not discounting any of the saboteurs, but
Right.
you may not notice it as much as you do the victim. And the victim is the one that you think of that when I read the Bible and it's like, oh, the outcast and the shunned, that's what I think of with the victim. And we know what the
Hmm.
Bible says about them.
Right.
So that meekness shall inherit the earth, right? So
Right.
it's kind of, it's really a beautiful thing and it is possible. It's just very unlikely that you're going to be able to do it just on your
By
own.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah. That would be, like you said, very, very hard to get out of that. I mean, because it's such a loop and circle. And so, I don't know, debilitating, it would seem.
Right. So here's the thing, life will never be pain free.
Right.
So if I have a strong victim saboteur, I always say we see what we seek. So if I
Hmm.
have a strong victim saboteur, every single pain that comes my way is going to be magnified for me.
Mm. True.
So if you don't have a strong victim saboteur and maybe something doesn't go your way, it could even be a profound loss, right? And I
Hmm.
mean, we don't stop feeling loss, we just
Right.
learn how to deal with it. But for the woman with the strong victim saboteur, it's debilitating. It can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say it's really, really hard to do on your own, but it is not impossible to do with help.
Yes. And that's what we want. We want to help people. We want this person to become a warrior. So, again, if this is you and you think this is something that you struggle with, please reach out to your pastor or someone to help. But even Krystina can help you. Reach out to her, have a call with her, take the assessment, which I'm going to be taking, and we're going to be discussing next. So you are comfortable, because one thing about the saboteurs is we know they're based in fear, and what we want to do is empower people. So I'm going to allow Krystina to empower me to talk about the saboteurs I struggle with and do it on this show. And it's not scary. It's actually everything that we learn about ourselves and the tools that Satan, our enemy, uses against us only makes us that much stronger towards God and helping others. So that's all the reason why we are doing this. So I so appreciate you having you on the show again. Although this is the last Saboteur, you can see all of them for the past 10 weeks on the show. But next week I'm going to be taking the assessment. I'll take it ahead of time, but we're going to do a live assessment call so you know what that's like. So stay tuned. We're not over yet. And so I'm super excited to do this and just let people aware that it's really not scary to get help.
I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too. And I have enjoyed this series so much. I've learned a lot. And well, we'll see what next week. It's all going to be live. So we don't know what's going to happen. I might cry. I might hysterically laugh. I might learn something new. You don't know. So be here. We'll see you next week.
Take care. Blessings.
Blessings.